those who have been or currently are in the foster care system, what do you wish people knew? I was in foster care from age 6 to 18 and it was the absolute worst thing that ever happened to me. The foster care system is deeply flawed and literally took me and my siblings' entire childhood away from us because of their lack of ability to give a single crap about us foster kids as human beings. They trust deeply in the foster parents more than the kids. We all showed very clear signs of being abused. We had no medical records because we were never taken to the doctors or even a dentist. A simple investigation would have shown we were being mistreated in multiple ways. But they trusted my foster parents' mischievous smile instead because it meant they didn't have to put the effort into looking into it, moving us to new homes, and losing what they considered to be a good foster home. I told my foster worker to her face every detail of the abuse, physical and emotional, that was in that home. She told me there was nothing she could do. Nothing. It's been 6 years and that crazy bee is still a foster parent. She recently had a toddler taken away from her because they found her boarded up into a room, literal boards nailed into the wall. And guess what, she's still a foster parent. CFSCPS does not care about kids, their families, or anything that should be important about the foster care system. They make money, they get troubled kids out of their hair, and they pretend not to see what is right in front of them so that they don't have to do their jobs. Not all the social workers are like this, but enough that it's a huge problem. That's sick. My mom starting doing foster care when I was in middle school. She was a single mother who already had 6 of her own kids, so it was clear to see that she loved children. When I was a senior in high school, she adopted her first foster child, a little girl who came directly to us at 8 days old from the hospital fighting drug addiction. A year and a half later, we had 2 more foster children, a brother and sister, whose parents were in and out of shelters because they kept robbing others and being kicked out. They still had visitation rights for about a year and a half before one of them came back with a burn on her arm. After that, my mom adopted them as well. Then, my mom got a call that the first child we adopted had a 1-year-old brother in the system. You probably know where this is going. We adopted him as well. About 3 years later, my mom got word that their mother had another child in prison, and before they could even ask, we took her in too. She was a little less than a year at the time, but before she turned 3 we had adopted her as well, increasing the family total to 11. Most people I talk to tell me mom is a son. I always respond with, she's either that or insane. What I do know is that 3 months ago I watched my 13-year-old sister, who I remember holding while she wrapped tightly in a blanket shaking at 8 days old, sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow as the Dorothy in her middle school play. All I could do not to cry was tell myself that I was sitting front row and she could see me. Then, in the same week, I watched my 11-year-old brother win another wrestling tournament, after which I had to flex on him to keep him humble. In the end they are all happy, healthy, and when I come home to visit they all run to give me a hug and welcome me back. If you're reading this and you're in the system now and feel like you're in a bad place, I want you to know that there are people out there who will love you and take you in as family. Life can be tough, but you're tougher. Your mom sounds like a great person. I'm glad she was able to help those kids. My husband and I were set to foster. We had done the classes, home study, everything. However, I was diagnosed with cancer and we were unable to complete. We were then denied when we reapplied when I was in remission. I was able to join an organization that partners with foster teens who are aging out of the system to provide mentoring services. I am in HR and I help with resumes, interview prep, job seeking, etc. I am also just an adult who is available to listen. There are ways to support the foster system if you are unable to foster a child. I am so grateful that I am allowed this opportunity. God bless people like you. When I left foster care there were no resources like this. Heck, I could still use resources like this. You are one of the rare ones that actually give a dang. It's nice to see in a world that is usually just money focused. Had a pretty happy family until I was in high school. Played sports. Oldest of my siblings. Middle class family. No worries. Right before high school my mom and dad got divorced. We stayed with my mom and things went downhill from there. I ended up aging out of foster care. I think some of the most important things some people should realize is that supporting the child during foster care and after they have aged out are key. I was lucky enough to be part of a program where they would give me a stipend every month as long as I was a full-time student or working a full-time job. I can't tell you how critical it was and how beneficial having that extra money to help buy a car, groceries, and an apartment was. Even with no family or safety net, I ended up becoming a pretty good functioning member of society. I also want to add that caseworkers are sometimes some of the greatest people on this earth and can really make or break a child's life. From placement into a home, to advocacy for you in family court, to showing you all the resources available to you as a state ward or foster child. The last thing would be that being patient with someone who has gone through that is a big thing. I had no idea what a healthy romantic relationship looked like and had issues with that. Figuring out what a work ethic was, how important insurance was, how to get it, how to get a bank account. Basic everyday life is not easy when you're constantly thinking about if you'll need to pack your things in a trash bag in 5 minutes to go to another house or not. So be patient, hold the person, the child or young adult accountable, and show some love. It'll make a huge difference. Edit. Just wanted to add that vetting families or getting good ones is tough, but needed. But the family I stayed with got paid $1,500 plus a month for my brother and I. All we had to eat though was ramen noodles, Hot Pockets, or whatever was left over from their grill outs. Most of the money they received would go to buying hundreds of dollars of BBQ food to cook for their friends every other day or weed. None of that went to buying us new clothes, paying the $10 fees for us to at least play sports still, books, school supplies, toiletries, nothing. Making sure that the money the families get are actually going to the children's needs would be a big step in the right direction. You sound like you are doing well, and I'm so glad to hear that. It's disgusting that families are allowed to do that. I have a little brother who was adopted from the foster system. Our parents are good people. The most heartbreaking things that I noticed from him in the beginning were a kind of confusion at being treated well by our parents and also confusion at being treated as just one of us included as a family member. There are some not so good foster homes out there. Family did foster care for 26 years. I was adopted when I was 5. Some are pure and want to help and maybe expand. Some are in it for $. Always been interested in fostering older kids when I get off age and life goal, but I honestly never even knew people got paid for this. Or it could be taken advantage of like that. Gross. I was in foster care from when I was 3 until I was 7. Whenever I talk to people about it, they always immediately assume it was terrible, but it really wasn't. For one thing, I was moved between 5 or 6 different houses in that time, and only one of them was actually terrible. The rest of the households were really loving. They generally accepted me as part of the family, and although it was hard to get used to at first, over time it felt like they were my family. Foster parents are unbelievably nice people. The fact that they were so willing to bring these kids they've never met before in and treat them like family is mind-blowing. Most of the families even let my mom come see us so that way we wouldn't feel bad. The reason we were moved around so much was because my older sisters were teenage drug addicts who started fights with a lot of the siblings and parents. That's the most I've been able to gather because my parents won't tell me anymore. Again, I was moved around a majority of the time from when I was 3-5. After that, they separated us at the 5th house and that's where I remained until I was 7. I was moved again for about 2 months, but I don't know why. After those 2 months, I was reunited with my mom, although it took a few more years before my dad came back. I wish people knew that we had to learn certain coping mechanisms that create barriers we had to in order to survive. We need people in our lives willing to help us remove the barriers. To know that all we want is to feel safe, to feel loved. We know it's freaking hard to do. We need you. I wish people didn't take for granted the beauty and the importance of found families for people who had to live in foster care. Found family means everything for me, and I feel like people don't appreciate found families a lot, or they take those families very lightly. Also, people underestimate how awesome a wonderful teacher can be for students. Teachers, if you read this, all I can hope is you don't take pity on foster kids. That happened to me way too often. Just be yourself and treat me like your other students, please. I was in foster care, on and off, for some of middle high school. It was whatever, and always a difficult adjustment to living the life I was living. No rules, everyone doing drugs all of the time, and seemingly I'd get more in line and fit in with the family and then get moved back home or with a family member and then it would start again. I want people to know how hard early adulthood is with no family though. I turned 17, got kicked out and was too old to be replaced. I graduated high school living at my boyfriend's parents' house at the time. I had, miraculously, had a teacher who told me I could go to college and he actually helped me make that happen. I mean, this man showed up to my crappy part-time job on the weekends and dropped off food, books, gift cards for gas and helped me fill out a FAFSA and write my admissions essay. He literally changed my life because he cared. Now I'm adult, 26, and I am still amazed I made it. I don't have kids of my own, but I can't wait to get to the point where I can foster kids. I know what it's like, and sometimes being a foster parent isn't only I'm going to adopt a baby, sometimes it's I'm gonna make sure this angry 16-year-old knows their options for the future and I want to be that person for someone. I'm totally going to send this to my teacher tomorrow and I'm sure he will get a kick out of it. He's retired now, but loves to know he made a difference. Yes, the teenagers definitely deserve someone with your experience and mindset. Wishing you all the luck as you move forward in life. Foster care was fine. It's after you leave it that is hard. Being a new adult with absolutely nobody to guide you. You want to move, you have no help. A crisis comes up, you have nobody to call. Nobody to help you figure out anything about jobs or apartments or bank accounts or insurance. No mom or dad to lend you $20 when your paycheck isn't going to last until next payday. You are sent out on your own, 18 years old, completely alone and no idea how anything works in the world. It's terrifying. I second this entirely. My entire adult life has been spent fearing homelessness. One bad thing happens and I have no one to fall on to help me. Due to an ugly custody battle between my parents, my sister and I spent a short time in foster care, about a year, and I was 3 when I was put in foster care, my sister a little older. I was in my potty training days and my foster parents made me wear diapers 24/7 and whenever I used the bathroom in my diaper they rubbed it in my face like I was a dog. Then also while I was there I got chicken pox really bad and they refused to take me to the doctor or get me any kind of cream to help the itching. Just let me suffer. I'm so sorry you went through that. I personally am not a foster child, but my dad and stepmom did foster care. I've had over 100 foster siblings over the years as a result. Some they've adopted, a few aged out, and most were placed back into their homes or with other relatives. From my perspective the worst thing is when, crappy, parents hang on to their rights and get their kids back. They clean up their act just well enough in the state's eyes, but really nothing has changed. The kids then wind up back in the system, or even more fricked up than before. Some parents really do change for the better and become fit to parent. It's just the ones who don't that make it hard to watch. I was in foster care in my teens. My experience may be different than others, but I found that if you aren't small and cute you are treated as tainted goods. The social worker doesn't really care about you unless you can make the business money, and if you make them good money they find a way to keep you for as long as possible. They can keep a child until they are 24 quite easily. You are often treated as if you are bad because your parents didn't want you anymore. Upon arriving at a group home I was instantly stripped of all privileges including being able to listen to music and had to earn the smallest of things back over the next 3 months. It felt like I was being punished. There are also no resources for when you leave the system. Foster families are often low income, using you for the extra income given to take care of you without actually using that money on you. They often don't teach you life skills. Education can easily get messed up because you are moved around as soon as you become an inconvenience to the family. Switching between blocks and periods makes it so that your credits don't count in certain instances. When I left foster care I found out 1.5 years of my schooling wouldn't count and it took another 3 months for them to transfer my records. The school told me to drop out and get my GED. My wife and I recently got our first foster care placement about 3 weeks ago. It's been a short time, but this has been the best and most fulfilling experience of my life. My little foster daughter is such a wonderful, strong little girl, and I am happy to be able to provide her with a safe and loving home. This is the first time in her life she's lived somewhere and not had a lot of other kids around, and I think she's really flourishing with the one-on-one attention. I was in foster care for about a year, and one thing I wish more parents knew is patience is so important for some children. A lot of us come from troubled pasts, and trying to immediately force change, whether it be things like schedule or behavior, can do so much more harm than good, and getting frustrated with us isn't helping much either. Oh man, my foster home had chores and structure, and shared my room with 3 other girls all under the age of 8, and somehow because I was the oldest it was my job to make sure they kept our room clean. I reacted really poorly to it all. I was in and out of foster care as a teen, 21 now. I wish people knew how incredibly difficult and lonely life can be when you age out of the system or reach adulthood. I was lucky enough to go to college and have most of my expenses paid for, but it was really hard to navigate college and find support systems because colleges aren't really equipped to handle kids like us. I always appreciated the adult mentors that tried to treat me like their daughter and the friends that invited me to spend time with their families, as long as it wasn't out of pity. I had to leave college last January. I was 2 years in, for a plethora of reasons. Hopefully one day I'll get to go back. The college graduation rate for former foster youth is incredibly low, and I want to give kids a little hope that they're more than a statistic and their story is still unwritten. Some farmers use foster kids as essentially slave labor. I was one of those kids. I got up at 4:30 am to go round up the cows off the 180 acres and get milking started before I could get ready for school. In summer it was the same, except full herd milking and more chores all day. Couldn't ever go anywhere and smelled like dung all the time no matter how much I showered. Hated it, ran away, but social services brought me back. I did learn a good work ethic though. My sister is a foster parent. She said that the episode of The Simpsons where they have to go to parenting classes to get the kids back is closer to reality than you think. Foster care and being in the system doesn't mean you live in a foster home. At 8 I was taken away from my parents who were drug addicts. I've lived with my grandparents since, and legally, I will always be considered a foster child and in custody of the state. I'm not in a foster home, and never have been in one. In Australia we call this family care, when you're placed with family members instead of strangers. I think it's still under DCP, Department of Child Protection, but has different policies attached. A lot of people who don't want to have their own children decide to foster and have no idea what they are getting into. A foster kid is not at all like having your own baby. Foster kids have issues. They have no sense of safety or stability. It takes a long time to build trust with them. They act out over the craziest crap. But on the flip side, a lot of people act like all foster children are going to burn their foster parents alive or something, and in most circumstances that is not the case. They are children. They're confused and lost and alone. They are not psychopaths by default. I was a foster kid from 6-16 and no one I talk to now has any idea what foster care is like at all. I was in the foster care system and I went through 14 homes from start to finish. I started when I was 7 months and I finished when I was 7 years old. For the sake of time I will leave a bunch out, and if anyone wants to know more I can give a more detailed response that I am comfortable to give. It gets really dark, so I at times have trouble remembering all of it due to my brain intentionally blocking some stuff out. I was put into the system due to my biological mom being way too young when she had me. She was 15 years old. According to my file I was moved a lot due to being very hyper, rambunctious, and I was an escape artist. They didn't like the fact that I would try to sneak into the pantry to take cereal and hide under the bed to try and eat it, and a myriad of other things. Thinking back on this, it means that someone at some point withheld food from me for a long time. I remember when I was 4 a strange man took me from the foster home and took me to a store to buy a toy, but when I picked it out I remember he took it quickly, picked me up and ran me outside of the store really quickly. I didn't know what this meant at the time, but he totally stole the toy and did not purchase it. Anyways, he took me to his house afterwards to play with the toy. When we got there I remember getting very thirsty and asking for some water. He said he didn't have anything to drink but this and handed me what I think was beer. I remember not liking it, but he made me drink it. I do not remember much else from that point, just remember waking up back at the foster home. I then was moved to a different foster home right after that. You know, at this point I'm just going to end it. Not sure if anyone will read this anyways. If someone wants to know more I can share at that point. I will fast forward to getting adopted. So I was adopted at the age of 9 from a Christian family, and that is when true heck started for me. I lived with them for 7 years and graduated high school early, so I didn't have to be with them anymore and go through the abuse they suffered upon me. I now am a software developer after putting myself through college. I just realized how long this story really can be, and I'm not really up for writing a novel tonight, haha. I read it and I appreciate you sharing. Proud of you for overcoming all that. I was in a group campus home thing. More like a rehabilitation center for troubled kids. I wasn't super troubled. I just acted out. It's not fun. It's not nice. People aren't friendly. It's their job that they get paid to do. So they don't act like a parent. They watch us. Make sure we do things on time. Make sure we aren't up to anything bad. Pretty much a schedule of necessities to live. And that's it. But I am now 21, living with my fiance. I own a not nice house that I rent out. I work in shipping receiving. We have a sweet pit lab mix and an Australian shepherd. And we are soon buying a very nice home. I wish I had never been there, but glad I am where I am now. In the system from for 18 years, the stigma I can't stress enough. It's not our fault we are here. I can't tell you how many people treated me like it was my fault that I was a foster kid. I'm 34 and still dealing with issues that occurred while I was in care. Shoots rough AF. When my mum was a kid, her family, both parents, my grandparents, and her 5 siblings, 8 in total in one house, fostered a boy. They took him in every couple of weekends and over the holidays. Got along well with the only son in the family. Nothing bad ever happened. My grandparents wanted to adopt him, but once his sister was old enough, I guess she took him out of foster care because they weren't able to look after him anymore. Cut to 2 years ago, 30ish years later, Mum and I were watching a program about people finding lost family on social media. You can guess what happened then. A couple of weeks later, they all had a family reunion and recounted stories from those days. He had never forgotten them all either and was still ever so grateful to this day for them. You never know what small difference you can make in someone's life at a young age. I was in foster care from age 4 until age 10. For me it absolutely sucked. You could tell the families were just in it for the checks. I was with 4 families total. The foster care system in Tennessee even separated me and my 2 sisters. I was finally adopted at age 11 and I love my family to death. It bothers me immensely how much it costs to adopt somebody. The system is completely broken. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.